All rise. Magistrate court is now in session. Honorable Judge Henry presiding.
Good morning. Please be seated. Madam Clerk, let me know when you're ready. Okay, so good morning.
Good morning, Judge.
Where do you want to start?
Serving a county of almost 400,000 residents, the Ada County Domestic Violence Court in Boise, Idaho, was created to improve the handling of some of the justice system's most challenging cases involving violence among intimate partners. The court was designated a National Mentor Court by the Federal Office on Violence Against Women for its groundbreaking innovations, which include enhancements to improve victim safety and defendant monitoring.
Business as usual doesn't work. It's not having successful outcomes. People are reoffending. Victims are not feeling safe. They're not feeling like they have any confidence in the court system. We want that victim to live in a home where she's not fearful, where she's not waking up in the morning just waiting for the static electricity in the air to change to see what mood the spouse is in.
Among many enhancements, the court makes an effort to better understand families, victims, and offenders by using evidence-based risk assessment tools to inform its decisions.
Each of our police reports actually include the Idaho risk assessment of dangerousness in each domestic violence report.
Some of the information that we're receiving off that Idaho risk assessment of dangerousness tool is lethality factors. So we're looking to see whether or not there's previous domestic cases, whether or not an individual has unreported history of domestic violence, whether there's been attempted strangulations, forced rape. We're looking for periods of separation, whether or not law enforcement has had contact with this offender before.
The court has also expedited the handling of cases. This has allowed the court to link victims more swiftly to safety services and offenders to treatment, while minimizing the harm that a prolonged court case can have on families.
We came up with a system that accelerates the domestic violence cases through the system, the goal being 45 to 60 days from that time of arrest to that case being dispositioned.
The goal that we wanted to accomplish was to avoid the deterioration that families experience as a result of an extended period of time when criminal cases are not dispositioned.
You get them into a phase where you're addressing treatment, you're holding an offender accountable, the victim's accessing resources.
The expedited process allows victims to have finality, and additionally, offenders' due process rights are also being accounted for.
By coordinating with court personnel and community-based providers, the court has developed a range of policies and procedures to improve security for victims both inside and outside the courthouse.
The court will issue no contact orders, almost always at arraignment, to make the victim feel safe. In addition to that, there's physical safety support at the courthouse. When persons come into the courthouse, they're screened through metal detectors. The Women's and Children's Alliance also has victim advocates who will travel with the victim up to different court levels and be in the hallways with them if needed. In addition to that, the marshals have a policy that the parties leave the building separately.
I am present in court at every session to be there with the victims, to answer their questions, to make sure that they have the ability to address the court should they need it. And if they choose not to be in court, then I'm calling and letting them know what happens afterwards.
My role with the organization, with the Women's and Children's Alliance, is to oversee civil legal assistance for victims. So we have emergency shelter, and we also have transitional shelters. We also have case management services and counseling services, and that's for children, teenagers, and adults.
The court works closely with the local Family Justice Center, which houses a number of law enforcement and victim services agencies under one roof, making it a safe and convenient place for victims to get legal, medical, emotional, and social support.
We meet with victims the morning after a probable cause arrest of domestic violence. That occurs every day at 11 a.m. at Faces Our Family Justice Center. We can meet with victims then, and victims can get a multitude of services at Faces.
Faces of Hope Victim Center is a triage center for victims in Ada County. We literally are a one-stop shop of immediate crisis medical, social, educational, and legal services. And we serve domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, and elder abuse right here in our facility.
The court moves cases quickly through the system to minimize negative impacts on families, but it also takes time at each hearing for litigants to voice concerns.
I've been going through this since 2014. He gets to call and call me filthy names and I'm worthless, and then that just puts me back to start one again. I want to say you guys really, it's a breath of fresh air over here. I do appreciate it.
It's because of these people that he's not going to be a player, and we're going to hold him accountable.
Thank you.
Offender accountability is another key component of the court's approach to handling domestic violence cases. Through frequent court appearances and regular updates from probation staff, the court monitors compliance with its orders.
In the regular criminal calendar, I would sentence them. The only way I'd hear about them is if there was a probation violation or a contempt filed later. But domestic violence court, we have very frequent reviews. We're bringing the people in.
The court sets regular review hearings, anywhere from a bi-monthly basis all the way up to 120 days out once an offender is doing really well in their process.
Someone did not attend a domestic violence class last night. That treatment provider has to upload that information to a computer system, and my probation officer will then notify the prosecuting attorney, who can then ask me for an emergency hearing to bring the defendant in. So that's immediate accountability.
If somebody violates a court order, you've got to move quickly. And if you don't, you give the idea that nothing's going to be done and people can get away with stuff.
At first, we might call them in for an unscheduled meeting, do a verbal warning. We have done group meetings for probationers of domestic violence where we have them come in for a group probation meeting. If they're not doing well, they have their peers that are usually also in their domestic violence group, and those peers can actually give them feedback outside of group. If noncompliance continues to happen, we can even take them into custody for a couple days on discretionary jail time, and then eventually it would result in a probation violation.
Thank you, Judge. Not only do I have concerns about the fact that he's already lying to his probation officer about the substance abuse evaluation, and the fact that he's not reporting for drug testing, and I'm curious if some discretionary jail time would be a good idea here, Judge.
Yeah, no, I'm grievously disappointed. I'm going to remand for 3 days, forthwith, no options. When you get out in 3 days, if you don't immediately make contact with your PO, I think you've heard that the state is ready to fire up a probation violation, and there's significant jail time over your head, 441 days of jail that can be imposed.
2 judges share the docket, presiding on alternate weeks. This allows the judiciary to innovate using existing staff and resources.
This judge is going to keep mainly their docket, and this judge will keep mainly their docket, but every other week they're going to alternate presiding over the domestic violence court.
I firmly believe that the person who's in charge of running a domestic violence court has to be somebody who wants to be there, who has an interest in and has been educated about domestic violence issues, and wants to actually know this family, know this individual, and ask these really hard questions, and actually start caring about the outcomes in these cases.
One key to the success of the domestic violence court is that it has built links to local resources and cultivated community buy-in.
A judge has to really look holistically at their community to figure out where your resources are, where they're not, where are your gaps in resources, and have everybody sat down and talk to one another about sharing resources.
The biggest way to enhance collaboration and coordination between the court and its partners is to maintain communications with them about what we're actively doing and where we want to go. In addition to that, we want to make sure that we keep track of what hasn't worked in the past. I also keep in touch with different service providers, ask them how are things going, what do you see working, what's not working.
I think anytime you try to do something like this, you've got to change the culture, and we change the culture in the judicial system, as to how these cases are handled. And I think culture change in the broader community. But that's a continual job.